Senior day for the Nittany Lion football team, and seniors will run through the tunnel. They really played a huge role in bringing Penn State back.
Penn State plays Nebraska. Nebraska coming in at 4-6. They've won 893 games in their storied career, Todd. They're not going to win 894, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, we're talking Nebraska. Oh, and plenty of Rutgers, too. Yeah. Blue-White Tailgate is next.
And we welcome everyone to the Blue-White Tailgate. Steve, Trey, Todd, a little bit later, Jay Paterno and Allison Luthman as well. And Penn State bounced back, beat Rutgers as you predicted. I mean, really, there had to be one Maverick on the set.
Well, let's see. Let's schedule. You're not scheduling Alabama for your homecoming game, right? And Rutgers isn't very good, and Penn State is this year, so it was pretty easy.
Yeah, about 12:30. Things seemed to go their way a little bit. It took about 30, 40 minutes to get started, but once they did, they handled their business with the Scarlet Knights.
And in fact, Todd mentioned that start. That's our Kish Bank momentum moment, the opening kickoff of the game. Brought to you by our good friends at Kish Bank. The momentum moment, let's kick it short. Last time I saw this was 1979, Miami and Penn State. The ball went over Bruce Clark's head, and Miami recovered, and Jim Kelly and the Canes won that day 26-10. Now, what makes, to me, the momentum moment here is the fact that Penn State, they talk about quick change, only gave up 3, right? The momentum, if Rutgers had scored 7, would have been a big plus. They only scored 3.
What did Coach Franklin talk about? He said, how do we handle sudden change? It doesn't get much more sudden than the opening kickoff turning into a turnover like that. And the defense responded, Steve, like you said, by holding them to a field goal.
Yeah, no question. And then there was a point in the game where Penn State forced 7 3-and-outs defensively in this game. They fell behind 6-0, scored 35 unanswered points, and James Franklin liked what he saw.
No, I thought, besides the opening kick, I thought we played pretty good. There's some things that we got to get cleaned up. I think the odd front gave our guys a little bit of hesitation, and we didn't play as fast and aggressive up front as we need to. But I think we made progress, and we were able to get a fairly convincing win against a program on the rise.
Then there's the next part. You mentioned the odd front. They'll see that this week. We'll get to it later in the show. They got a big plus there. Time now for the PSECU Update Desk. Allison Luthman standing by.
Hey guys, welcome to your PSECU pregame update, bringing you everything you need to know before kickoff this week. Saquon Barkley's 85 all-purpose yards on Saturday gave him a total of 5,055 in his 3 seasons here at Penn State, which is a career record at PSU. The defense also allowed only 43 passing yards, the fewest allowed in a Big Ten conference game in program history. Saturday is Senior Day in Beaver Stadium. All 23 seniors will be honored on the field for their contributions on the field and in the classroom. This is also James Franklin's first class of recruits to complete their senior year. They'll be facing Nebraska for the first time, as the 2 teams have not met since 2013. That's been your PSECU pregame update. We'll see you at the game.
All right, thank you, Allison. Now let's take a look at the college football playoff standings that were released on Tuesday night. Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Miami. Penn State, though, sits in the 10 spot, which opens the door for a New Year's 6 game for the 2nd consecutive year.
Well, I mean, Penn State's played well. I mean, if they win out, which like they should, you got a 10-2 Penn State team. I mean, they will be in the top probably 6, 7, 8, and they deserve to be there, Todd.
Yeah, your program's in good shape when people are disappointed with the possibility of only winning 10 games, or that when you get beat by a team, the fans all flood the field and storm the field. I mean, look, we got a great bowl game possibility coming up as long as they take care of Nebraska and Maryland to finish out the year. But, some of these matchups to consider, guys. I mean, Notre Dame, how much you love them, Trey. Penn State, Notre Dame would be quite a bowl game some of these people are looking for.
Yeah, actually, that would be quite a bowl game show.
Yes, it would.
Yes, it would be. All right, Nebraska comes in 4-6, coming off a loss at Minnesota, 54-21. Despite all that, Brandon Smith says there's a lot on the table Penn State needs to respect.
You know, they're a good team, and you know, they've been able to play better than their record might indicate, and so we're not going to take them lightly for sure. We're going to prepare the same way we always do, and you know, defensively and on special teams, from my perspective, going to watch a lot of film, you know, work on the fundamentals, and get back to, you know, playing good defense, good special teams consistently this week.
And a good close win along the way, rallying to beat Purdue on the road. That was a good win for Nebraska there. The series, this series dates back years, but they haven't played that often. They have won the last 4 meetings between the two, but they haven't faced each other since 2013. I announced the 1920 game. I thought that was an exciting shutout. Oh, what?
Well, no, I just was going to say, you know, watching that clip with Brandon Smith, and you just think, like, how wonderful a guy he is, and, you know, and for him to be talking about Nebraska like they're the old Nebraska team, I mean, he's just too nice, and Nebraska's not very good.
Yeah, it is unfortunate when you look at the schedule a couple of years ago and you say, oh, senior day against Nebraska, and you think, what a classic matchup it's going to be. I mean, Coach Riley and the Cornhuskers are just not what they should be.
Over the years, Nebraska has built a lot of that program, part of the backbone of walk-ons. Isn't it interesting that Brandon Smith, coming off a 10-tackle performance, is one of Penn State's walk-ons, and a lot of walk-ons have done great things at this university. You know, on the field and off the field, Brandon Smith is absolutely one of them. Coming up, we'll take a look at a Nittany Lion offense that put up 35 points against Rutgers, and they continue to roll on, as we do as well, on Blue White Tailgate. Welcome back. Took a little bit to get the Nittany Lions out of the gate offensively on Saturday, but once they got out of the gate, they galloped.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State's very, very good offensively, and we talk about all the time, you know, what's going on with their offensive line, and, you know, you got McSorley, you got Barkley, you got Gesicki, and, you know, at the end of the day, they scored 35 points, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, they're just so explosive. It's usually a feast or famine situation, right? You feel like, maybe they struggle for a possession or two, and then all of a sudden, bam, 4 plays, and they're in the end zone.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. First of all, our Family Clothesline Offensive Player of the Week, brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline. Go to PennStateClothes.com. And number 9 is the guy that gets the call this week, and that is Trace McSorley. Another strong performance, both with his legs and obviously his ability to put the ball in the air. I mean, here's your facilitator right here.
Yep. I mean, he's played at such a high level for a while now, and you know, it's almost to the point where he almost makes it look easy, and it's really not that easy.
And we just saw that touchdown throw to Deshaun Hamilton, that throw to Brandon Polk. He's got a pretty strong arm. When he can get some momentum behind it, the guy can throw, and I think it's going to be fascinating to find out at the end of the year who the first team all Big Ten quarterback is going to be, because it's either him or J.T. Barrett. And look, every team has said Saquon Barkley's not going to beat us. Trace McSorley's going to have to beat us, and he's getting the job done.
Well, I personally know one person who has a vote. Okay. All right, time now for the Joel Comfer Drive of the Game, brought to you by our great friends at Joel Comfer in State College. And that drive is the one that Todd mentioned. 4 plays, 65 yards. Didn't take too long here. Down 6-0 goes to Mike Gesicki over the middle just to get things rolling on the drive. And then, again, when they get into a rhythm on a drive, they're pretty special to watch, aren't they?
Yep. I mean, they just, again, they make it look really easy. And here you go, Deshaun Hamilton, Mike Gesicki, just beating a couple of Jersey guys, beating their whatever home state university. And there's McSorley with the wheels. And, again, it's just they make it look easy. And it's really not that easy, folks.
And there's the touchdown right there. I referenced on the broadcast that to that point, Rutgers, if you're Chris Ash, you had done everything right to that point. You had controlled the game. You had a 6-0 lead. Everything was the way you needed it. And 4 plays, 65 yards, you're losing.
Yeah, things have changed.
That demoralizes you when that happens.
No doubt. And they had even quieted the crowd. I mean, it was a hush over the crowd at that particular point, just waiting for something to happen. And they responded. Like I said, it took them just 4 plays to get down there. All of a sudden, the shift is on. They got the lead, and then from there, Rutgers was in a rut.
I'll tell you, a guy that played a really solid game was Juwan Johnson. He made some big catches in the game, third down catches that kept drives alive. We talked about Hamilton. We talked about Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki says the extra work that they have put in has really paid off.
We'll catch another 100 before team meeting starts, and then we'll catch again after practice with Juwan. So, us three, we'll go out there and we'll, get a bunch of extra catches in, and then we'll finish with, 20 contested catches where, somebody's behind you, hitting you and slapping your hands and, distracting you, trying to, create like a defensive player. And then we'll also do some wet ball drills as well.
By the way, you do not high-five him when he has his gloves on. The superstitions, right? Yes, take the gloves off, then you do it. Just for reference for you.
Yeah, well, I'm not high-fiving Mike Gesicki anytime soon, so we don't have to worry about that.
Speaks highly of you.
I don't know if I can get up that high. I mean, the guy's like, 6'6" or whatever. I don't even think I can high-five Mike Gesicki.
Now, everyone, of course, is talking about how do you get the run game started. Now, Barkley has been the ultimate decoy this year. How many times has he been tackled without the ball? I think a lot of this works just by his mere presence, but you want to see the running game get going.
Sure. I mean, again, the running game, we were talking earlier in the pregame show that, talking about championship football and not Big Ten champions, I mean national champions. I mean, you've got to be able to control the clock. You have to be able to put a big drive together, take time off the clock, and it really starts with the offensive line. And the fact is, what he's done the last 2 years behind an offensive line that's very, very suspect is really unbelievable.
And think about this guy. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate, right? They've played 10 games. He doesn't even have 200 carries yet. He's not even averaging 20 carries a game. And you look at some of the numbers some of the other guys are putting up. Jonathan Taylor, a freshman for Wisconsin, the guy's getting 25 to 30 carries a game. It's just not possible the way that teams are defending the Nittany Lions to hand them just 25, 30 times.
All right, let's bring up the tail of the tape, the Penn State offense and the Nebraska defense. And the number on the right, the 200-yard number on the right, rush yards, and Minnesota really gouged Nebraska on the ground last week.
Yeah, well, I mean, just newsflash, Husker fans, Penn State's not Minnesota. And, I mean, if we can stay on a block just a little bit, I mean, Saquon Barkley could have 200 yards at halftime.
Yeah, they rushed for over 400 yards, the Golden Gophers did. Yeah. And they put up over 50. I mean, we're going to talk about Nebraska a little bit more, but they have got serious defensive issues right from the get-go. They gave up 36 to Arkansas State, 42 to Oregon, which is not a good Oregon team. I mean, they've had issues on the defensive side of the ball from the very beginning of the season.
Remember earlier in the show, James Franklin referenced that he thought that eventually once they got a handle on it, they did a good job against the odd front, the 3-4. Well, that's perfect preparation for this week. In terms of front, it's the same one that James Franklin's Nittany Lions will have to face.
Yeah, I think it just changes kind of, your combination blocks and who you're working to and how you're coordinated, across the board and how you're accounting for the second level players and things like that. So identifying most people that play a 3-4, they're typically bringing a fourth man.
It's interesting because some people wonder why more people don't play a 3-4, with 4 linebackers out there or taking a safety and making a safety a fourth linebacker. What was it, in the early 70s when Chuck Fairbanks went to the Patriots? He put a 3-4 in, then suddenly everybody in the NFL, the NFL's a copycat league. We know that anyway. So it's like, I have an H-back, I have an H-back. I play 3-4, I play 3-4. And you played in the 4-3, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, it's like, college sports or college football at a high level like Penn State is, it's almost like mimicking the NFL in many ways. And, you don't see many 3-4 fronts in the NFL. You see a lot of 4-3 fronts. I think what they try to do is they try to get their best pass rushers with their hands on the ground at the line of scrimmage to make it easy for them to make the sacks.
Well, what about personnel-wise? How does that change recruiting, Trey, when you're looking for kids, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3?
Well, I mean, I think it makes a big difference because you're a kid who has who's going to have his hand on the ground. I mean, Shane Simmons is a perfect example. He's a stand-up guy. He comes to Penn State, has his hands on the ground, and he's getting bigger. But it's a very unique situation when you have a kid like that. I mean, Micah Parsons, hopefully he comes to Penn State. He's going to have his hand on the ground, and he's going to be, got to be reckoned with for sure.
All right, so the Nittany Lion defense is coming off an outstanding performance where they gave up just 6 points overall. had 7 consecutive 3-and-outs that they forced and gave up only 43 yards through the air. We'll run down all of those numbers and much more as they get ready for a Nebraska offense that likes to throw the football. We'll talk about the Nittany Lion defense as we continue with more of Blue White Tailgate after this. Last week we were running down keys to the game. We talked about Penn State's ability to play with the lead, take away the run game, make Rutgers one-dimensional, and throw the football. They did all of that along the way. Allison Luthman takes a look at, by the numbers, how great a job Penn State did last week defensively.
Penn State got off to a slow start on Saturday and fell into an early hole after Saquon Barkley attempted to field a short kickoff on a bounce, but it bounced away from him and was recovered by Rutgers inside the Penn State 20. They soon after converted for a 33-yard field goal. It wasn't until the second quarter when Penn State forced its second 3-and-out of the game that Jason Kabinda says was the turning point for the Nittany Lions.
After that possession, we actually went and got an immediate 3-and-out, and that kind of gave us some momentum where we needed it to be because they got a big stop there, and we were able to come out, get a stop right back, and then we scored, so that was big. I just think we knew the second half we really just needed to come out. We needed to come out and kind of start to put the game away and play the way we were capable of playing. I think we didn't really play up to our standard during that first half, in my opinion, and I think that second half we kind of knew what we needed to do, and we went out and did that.
Kabinda did have 11 tackles, making it 9 total games now that he's had 10 or more tackles in his career, and also Brandon Smith had 10 tackles, making it his second game with 10 or more. Guys.
Thank you very much, Allison. I want to talk about Kabinda for one quick moment, and that is the ability to be smart and recognize. You played that way. You were always smart. You recognized exactly, Trey, what was going on. On the fake punt, you want to know how he made the play? Because when they lined up with the punt protector, he saw James Washington, 88 in the game. He said he hasn't been in the game before, and he's the tight end. And he ran right to him. Now that's how you play linebacker.
Well, I mean, I think it's very much instinctual, but you know, Jason Kabinda has played a lot of football at Penn State. You know, he's been in a lot of games. He's a 3-year starter.
Yep.
I mean, he's seen a lot of football, and you know, again, as a Jersey guy, I mean, of course he'll recognize those things.
Yeah, always got to slide that in there. You know, I love it when people talk about winning the game on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or during the preparation week and the film study. When you see that type of stuff, those are the kind of plays that can really make the big difference in a football game. Yes, they won by 29. So did that fake punt tackle win the game? No, but it could come in handy when you do your film prep in closer games, and that's what he recognized.
It just shows you the quality of the guy, what he's thinking. All right, Family Clothesline Defensive Player of the Week is his running mate at linebacker. Brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline. Go to PennStateClothes.com, and it's Brandon Smith. Stepped into the starting lineup, had 10 tackles. He's a guy who knows how to play, Trey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy, he has played a lot of football, although not on Saturdays per se. I mean, he really came of age last year against Michigan, where he stepped in a very, very difficult situation, had a double-digit tackle game then. You know, again, Bowen not playing, we don't know why, but the fact is Brandon Smith, you know, when he was called upon, he did what he needed to do.
Not only that, Todd, winning third down. Penn State's done a great job now on third down.
Yeah, they got him off the field, even in third and short situations. Really good tackling to keep the guys from being able to run and leap for those extra couple of yards to get the first down and move the chains. Going to be a real struggle, or more of a challenge this week against Nebraska, I should say, just in the sense of they like to pass the ball. It's a little, you know, Rutgers is passing challenged, let's say, to put it politely. Nebraska is not. So we're going to see if they can continue to do that, but it's certainly a nice trend.
Well, let's get to the tail of the tape. That Nebraska offense against the Penn State defense. You can see point-wise, about 25 a game, but it's the 273 yards a game passing. Normally in Nebraska history, you'll see 273 rushing.
Yes.
And maybe about 200-plus passing. It's a little different dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if Tanner Lee plays. He's in the concussion protocol this week, and if not, it's going to be O'Brien, who's a redshirt freshman, and you know, I mean, whoever's playing quarterback, you're going to have their hands full.
Look, it speaks to what you were saying before, Trey. This is not the traditional Nebraska team coming to Happy Valley. So for someone that hasn't watched a lot of football maybe in the last 10 years or so, and they hear Nebraska's coming, like, it's not Jarvis Redwine and it's not the guys that are running all over the place. It is, they're pass happy, and they can get it done. And even the backup, O'Brien, big, tall kid, strong arm, he can throw the ball.
He was 12 of 18 against Minnesota last Saturday when he came into the second half. One of the keys, though, of the game, getting a pass rush. James Franklin discussed that.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get some guys back from injuries, which would be helpful. I think getting back to the fundamentals and techniques and making sure that we're winning the one-on-one battles. For whatever reason, the last couple of weeks we've been rushing down the middle of people, which is the last thing that you want to do in pass rush. You want to be on the edge of people, and for whatever reason, we've done a little bit of that the last couple of weeks. So I think that will help.
Great test for the secondary, but you know what? That secondary has held up well all season long, and it's going to be a great test for them, though. All right, off to the film room we go. Todd and Jay Paterno break down Penn State and Nebraska after this.
We are back on the Blue-White Tailgate, and we're headed into the film room. It's brought to you by Beer Belly's Beverage with Jay Paterno. And, Jay, one thing film can't tell you is the impact that seniors have on a program. Senior Day, what's that mean to you?
Well, I think the big thing in Senior Day is Steve alluded to earlier in the show, just the emotions of Senior Day. And I think it's important that you get off to a good start on Senior Day, because then you get that behind you, you get all that stuff going, and you get into it. And, 2 and 5 in the last 7 Senior Days, and so Penn State's got to change that trend and get after it. Nebraska's a good opponent to have coming in for that.
Yeah, they're a big favorite against the Cornhuskers, and when you look at the film, this is not the Nebraska of old that you're looking at. Offensively, though, they can move the ball through the air.
No question. We're going to talk about that and take a look at what's going to be key. Nebraska's averaging 270 yards a game passing. That's 33rd in the country. When you look at Penn State's wins versus their losses, the teams that have beaten them and given Penn State the problems have been the ones that can throw the ball. Now, let's talk about what they do X and O wise. Now, again, Nebraska's quarterback situation is still a little up in the air as it relates to Tanner Lee playing or not. But let's talk about the X and O's. They are a 3-level pass game. They're going to get to you 3 levels on a bunch of different ways. And they like the short pass game, and they like downfield stuff, but they're going to give you a high-low. They're going to give you a 1, 2, and 3. 3 guys in this area to get a 3 level and now create the kind of reads they want on this corner and this linebacker. And the minute this linebacker comes out, they're going to take this short pass. So we'll take a look at the video here. And again, these are very easy against a team that likes to rush the passer like Penn State does. They're going to get the ball out, get it there in a hurry so they can get some plays. Another way they get to their 3 level. Now they're going to get into what is essentially a 2-backs using a second tight end. They're going to bring this guy down the seam and bring him out. They get 1 over the top, 2, and then they bring this tight end underneath. So again, a 3-level pass game, and these are difficult. Defensive coordinators hate this stuff, and the best way to defend it is obviously get the pass rush. But take a look at how effective this is. Now they come out. Again, quarterback drops straight back. They get that guy down the seam. They get the guy over the top, and here they get a touchdown. They've had some success throwing the football, and if they're able to do that against Penn State, it could be a long day. Here's one other way they get to the 3 level. Now we're talking play action. They still try and run the football even though they're not as successful. Now he comes off that play fake. They get this guy coming deep, this tight end. They get this guy coming across as the 2nd-level guy and a guy in the flat on the 3rd. Let's take a look at the video on this as well. Again, pretty good play fake, gets the linebackers up. They get the tight end behind them. They get a guy in the flat, and they get the 3rd receiver coming over. And again, another touchdown. Okay, so they've had some success doing that. Here's a good shot from the end zone, and you can see 1, 2, 3 right in the line there. You see that 3 level. Again, that's something Penn State's got to be ready for. The other thing they got to be ready for is Spielman, the guy that they like to get the ball to. Here is the jet sweep. They motion him across, motion them back, make these guys adjust. They run this play, the blocking up front to set up this run game, and now he comes in. They're actually going to leave this backside end, so take a look at how they do this. They bring Spielman across. He motions back across, which is a lot of running for that guy before he even gets the ball. But you can see he's got good speed, not great speed, but he's the guy they've got to get the ball to have some success on Saturday.
Well, look, and if Lee doesn't play, the backup O'Brien can throw the ball. Big, tall, strong kid, so they're not going to adjust the playbook much if he has to come in. They're still going to be throwing the ball.
No, still.
All right, defensively, you might have had your work cut out for you finding some good defensive plays. It looks like it might be an effort issue because they do have some individuals that can play, but what did you find defensively?
Well, they're inconsistent against the run game, obviously. And let's take a look at this shot here. This is a chance for Penn State to really hopefully get Barkley going again. You look at the last 6 games since Iowa, and the guy, if you take the sacks out, McSorley's been the guy that's really made the run game go more so than Barkley has. Now, that said, Barkley obviously draws a lot of attention, opens that up. But let's take a look at how they're going to play defense. Again, they like to play 2 safeties high. They like to double up your slot guys. But again, you've got to get the ball. They're going to take this guy and blitz him with a 3-man rush, becomes a 4-man rush, keeps your back in, and now he's going to spy the quarterback. Take a look at this. This should be something you would expect against Penn State because Penn State has a mobile quarterback. You see that middle linebacker sitting there. They do make some plays in the secondary. They're not bad. They've done a pretty good job against the pass, but I think McSorley will have a good day. One of the things that they do, when they do play gap integrity and they do run the football, they have been pretty effective. This is the Big Ten's leading rusher. Take a look at how effectively they maintain their gap control here. They actually move the line of scrimmage back. They come off blocks and make plays. They have the ability to do some of that. Here's another example of how they've been able to do certain things. Motions causes them problems, but again, this defensive end loses leverage, and I think Penn State's tackles will be able to handle them. And take a look at how this run happens when they lose leverage. Now, Northwestern's back is able to get outside because they get the leverage. They get guys kicked out. There's the gap, and all of a sudden you got a 15, 16-yard play. The guy they're going to match up against Gesicki, this will be something to watch, is number 3, Newby. He'll be starting. He played pretty well at times. But again, when they do that, he's got a man-to-man. So down the field, he's going to be with him. He's got some ability in that. But again, watch how effectively he can play at times when he's hustling. Take a look at this run here now. He's got the tight end man-to-man. The tight end comes around and blocks. He comes off his block, and he makes a one-on-one tackle against a really good running back. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just there's no alley defenders in the short yardage, 3rd and 1. They like to get in this bare front, and that's going to look for Penn State to maybe run that speed option. Take a look at this now. Because there's nobody in the alley, they should have a chance to get the ball out there on that speed option and make some plays in short yardage.
All right, I think Nebraska's going to need a little help from Mother Nature. We'll see. Maybe the weather can help them out. They shouldn't stop the Nittany Lions this week. All right, Jay, thanks a lot. We'll be right back on the Blue White Tailgate.
Penn State, Nebraska, coming up 4 o'clock Saturday at Beaver Stadium. Mike Riley, in his 3rd year at Nebraska, brings his football team in. Here's the Mike Riley file. Oregon State, San Diego Chargers, back to Oregon State. Then he took the Nebraska job in 2014. And you know what? He's only in his 3rd year, yet everyone, quote, says he's in trouble.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's not going to be coaching at Nebraska next year. So he's going to be a 3-and-done. I will personally talk about that a little bit later, but Nebraska's in trouble and they need to make a change.
So we can add you to the list of people that say he's in trouble then.
Correct.
Apparently.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, this is not a hot seat. This is a scolding hot seat. Yeah. And we have a question here. It says, has Nebraska lost its identity? The answer is yes. They have lost their identity. And look, it's not just not running the ball. That's, modern college football. People like to throw it around the yard. It's defensively. It's defensively. They have completely lost their identity. To be run over by Minnesota last week, that's just not poor tackling. That's just not wanting to tackle to give up 400 yards against the Golden Gophers.
And it's against a 4-5 Minnesota team. It's not like it's, they're playing Alabama and Alabama, hangs 51 on them. They're playing a 4-5 Minnesota team, and they give up 51 points. It's insane.
And Coach Riley looks like an exceedingly nice guy, but he looks like he should be showing up on campus to teach biology, not the football team. And it's strange, right? He doesn't look like a football coach, but he's been very successful in the Pac-12. He may be headed back to the Pac-12.
Well, there's not a person I've ever heard in the coaching profession that's ever said a negative thing about Mike Riley.
Yep.
I think he knows exactly what he's doing, and everybody personally just likes Mike Riley very, very much. But the question about losing their identity, they're also struggling in the red zone. That's another part. Defensively, they've struggled in the red zone. They've given up 36 scores this year. 32 of them are touchdowns. Yeah. That's a struggle.
Especially against the Penn State team that adds by 7. You know, they don't kick a lot of field goals, Penn State. They score touchdowns. They get into the red zone, and they plug it in. I mean, when you do the math, it's 7, 14, 21, 28. They're racking up points.
Now, we don't know who the starting quarterback will be. Tanner Lee was put into concussion protocol. Patrick O'Brien played the second half last week against Minnesota. 12 of 18 passing, by the way. Did a good job, the redshirt freshman did, in a tough spot. But when it comes to Tanner Lee, and there's a lot of tape of him between Tulane and Nebraska, James Franklin is impressed.
You know, offensively, you know, their quarterback makes them go. You know, from what I've seen on film and everybody I've talked to, big, strong quarterback is going to look great in warm-ups. You know, can make all the throws, sling it all over the field. Dynamic at the wide receiver position.
And those wide receivers, Stanley Morgan, good player. DeMornay Pearsonell, good player. Then there's J.D. Spielman. Rick Spielman's son stepped in. He's that good type of all-around player Nebraska's always liked to build parts of their offense around.
Sure. I mean, he's what it would be their I-back back in the day when they ran the I formation. It was like, you know, he's a guy who returns kicks. You know, he can catch the ball, obviously, and runs really good routes. And you know, he's definitely a threat, but I just don't think they have enough for Penn State.
I always like that term, scat back. He's
Yeah.
like a scat back, this Spielman kid. He can move laterally. He can, you know, he's fast. He's just a freshman. I mean, he's definitely dangerous. He's a guy to look out for on the field.
Yeah, 140 yards receiving last week. He also had a 200-yard performance earlier in the year. Although you can make numbers say whatever you want. They sent out something about, you know, a record for kickoff return yardage in the game. That means that the other team kicked off a lot, which means he gave up a lot of touchdowns.
Correct.
Zigbo and Wilbon, the two running backs. It looks like they're going to get Bradley back from an ankle injury as one of the I-backs as well. But defensively, this is where you talked about earlier. Weber's, by the way, a really good downhill linebacker. It's not like they're devoid of talent. A kid like Weber can play. A lot of people would like to have a guy like that. But overall, they have not been able to hold teams back.
Well, they haven't, because I don't think that they're very deep. I mean, across the board, they've got a couple of very solid players. But, you know, again, coming from the era that I came from, Nebraska, they were always in the top 5, top 6, you know, playing for national championships. They just don't have the kids.
Individually, pretty decent. Collectively, they're not getting the job done. And the last thing I'll say about Nebraska, and it really is a shame, but when they were brought into the Big Ten, look, they're supposed to offer some competitive balance in the West Division, and it's just not happening. Wisconsin is rolling through most of these programs. And even though I didn't like the name, the legends, and the leaders, the divisional alignment, I mean, look, they're probably going to be talking about divisional realignment because Nebraska can't get themselves to the level that it needs to be. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's certainly under consideration because some of these programs are not raising their level up to the Badgers.
Another key injury, Luke Gifford at outside linebacker. He's out. But Marcus Newby, who's a very good player who has started many games before in the past, is probably going to start in that spot. Coming up, it'll be Tom Dean Hart talking with Allison Luthman about college football in general as we continue after this.
Welcome back to Blue White Tailgate. We're joined on the phone by Tom Dean Hart, Big Ten Network senior writer. Tom, thank you so much for calling in with us today. We're really excited to talk to you.
You got it, Allison. The season's winding down, so as you know, as we get later in November, these games get bigger and bigger.
Yes, they absolutely do. And that's why, to get started, I want to talk about rankings. So this week's list is out. When you look at those teams in that top spot, especially when it comes to playoff predictions as we're getting closer to that time, what do you see when you look at this list?
Well, you know, there's a few things I can quibble with. I think Oklahoma should be a little bit higher, maybe even number 1, at least number 2. But I think by and large, the top 4 right now, Alabama, Clemson, Miami, and Oklahoma, that's right. And then there's the Big Ten picture with Wisconsin coming in at number 5. And I tell you what, it looks like everything's setting up just right for the Badgers here. As long as they win out, beat Michigan, beat Minnesota, win the Big Ten title game, go 13-0, they should punch their ticket and get into the playoffs.
So would you say then that a Big Ten team has a chance to make it into the playoffs this year?
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, I think if they can hold serve here and they like their chances to do it, I think they will. Obviously, Miami and Clemson are both ACC schools ranked above Wisconsin right now. And they're slated to meet in the ACC title game. So one of those two teams is guaranteed a loss, which, of course, would open up a spot for Wisconsin to move up should it take care of business. And you know what? There's even a scenario out there where a 2-loss Ohio State team could still have a good shot to get in this thing should Wisconsin struggle and get beat down the stretch.
Well, in talking about Big Ten teams in the rankings, Penn State made it back into number 10 this week. They were 14 last week. So if you would take it back to August before the season started and someone said, hey, eventually Penn State's going to be at number 14 and number 10, would you ever foresee that ranking coming that way?
Yeah, really. In some ways, I almost picked Penn State to win the Big Ten East going into this year, coming off that spectacular 2016 season. There's a lot to like there. I think they arrived a year ahead of schedule last season. Nobody anticipated a Big Ten championship in year 3 under James Franklin. They delivered it. And so, again, expectations rose this year. Most of that roster was back. So, again, yeah, it wouldn't have been crazy for me to envision Penn State having this type of season. They were right there with a chance to repeat as the Big Ten East champs. It didn't work out. But, again, there's a lot to like about the future of the program.
And you had mentioned James Franklin and expectations. He said this week in a press conference that he acknowledges his offense has been struggling. When you look at the Penn State offensively, what do you see there in the development throughout the season?
Yeah, the offensive line, without a doubt. That's the area that's got to improve. Line coach Matt Limegrover does a good job. That unit is one that still needs more talent, still needs more depth. We've seen Penn State struggle to run the football. Saquon Barkley's Heisman hopes have faded because of it. I think he only has 100 yards rushing one time in the last 5 games. So they just can't get a consistent push up front. I like the skill talent. Again, McSorley, the wide receivers. Mike Gesicki, the tight end. Great skill, but again, they need to get that offensive line up a couple notches to make that offense more consistent.
We've had so much talk around this offense, but we do need to look at the other side of the Penn State defense. What do you see there? Are they staying solid, or is there something that they need to be working on improving also?
Yeah, I tell you what, they answered the bell over there. I was worried about the line coming into the year, specifically who was going to rush the passer. And they've developed some real good pass rushers. Shaka Tony's been a guy off the edge who's been really good. Sharif Miller as well. So, really, there's not a glaring weakness on that side of the ball, I don't think, from back to front. So, again, they seem to be in pretty good shape there. Again, just that one glaring spot on the team is the offensive line at this point. They need to get that shored up if they can. There's no reason to think Penn State shouldn't be a consistent contender as long as James Franklin stays in place.
And as you mentioned, in the last couple of weeks, the talk around Saquon Barkley has diminished a little bit, but it seems as if attention's moved to Trace McSorley. What about him? Is he going to continue to develop, or does he need to kind of look back on what he's done through the season and make some changes also?
Yeah, you wonder where that offense would be without McSorley, right? I mean, that's one guy who can make something out of nothing. A great dual-threat quarterback, can extend the play with his feet, has a nice arm, an underrated passer as well, develops into a good leader. So, yeah, as good as Barkley is, and he's terrific, in a lot of ways, McSorley may be even more valuable just because he has the ball in his hands on every play. And, again, has been able to show that he can beat teams with his arm and with his feet. So, yeah, he's a real special player who's really kept this season alive.
And you mentioned Saquon Barkley's Heisman chances diminishing. So I know that you do get a vote for the Heisman candidate. What have you seen throughout the country in the last couple of weeks? What's changed significantly there?
Barkley was there for about the first month and a half. Like I said, he's faded. Not a real exciting race this year, to be honest with you. Most everybody thinks the Oklahoma quarterback, Baker Mayfield, it's his award to lose at this point. I would have to agree with that. A running back at Stanford named Bryce Love is probably number 2. Then the quarterback at Arizona. And honestly, Allison, maybe the best prospect from the Big Ten is Wisconsin's freshman running back, Jonathan Taylor. If he can rip apart Michigan this weekend, finish the season strong, I'm not saying Taylor's going to win the Heisman this year, but he could get invited to New York for the ceremony, which would give him a lot of publicity and maybe set him up for a good run next year as a sophomore.
Well, Tom, hey, thanks you so much again. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'll be right back with more Blue White Tailgate after this.
Well, not quite 4 years ago, in January of 2014, James Franklin stepped in and had to get a recruiting class going. Some of them were already recruited by Bill O'Brien, like maybe a Mike Gesicki. Let's take him, for example. But then he added in, obviously, players that he recruited. Now a bunch of these guys are going through the tunnel for the final time, and there are big reasons why everyone's excited about the future of Penn State football.
Sure. I mean, they've really done a great job. I mean, they're probably going to have, certainly back-to-back 10-win seasons their last 2 years, Todd, and they've been a great ambassador for Penn State football.
Absolutely. They have returned the program to the powerful position that it should be, and imagine this is a pretty emotional day for those guys. I'm sure you remember it well, Trey.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He appears to be pondering what he thought. Look, it's emotional for a guy like Mike Gesicki. You think about the journey these guys have been through, and Mike has lived it all.
Thinking back over my last 4 years here, I could have never imagined, that the team that I was playing on and the guys that, I was playing with could have, ever, made the memories that we've made here and, all the experiences that we've had. It's been unbelievable. And, it's going to be something that I'm going to cherish for a long time. So I'm excited for Saturday, but obviously don't want it to come too fast because I know once it starts, man, it's going to end here pretty quick.
Let's take a look at the senior class that'll run through the tunnel for the final time and what they've accomplished here. 40-22, but better than that. They're 17-3 their last 20 games here at Penn State, including being Big Ten champions and Pinstripe Bowl champions. Obviously, a great legacy that they have left because think about where the program was when they entered and think about where it is now when they're leaving. Pretty good. Time now for the good, the bad, the ugly. All right, this time we're back to typecasting. Todd gets the good.
Well, I'm going to say the good is just the state of college football at this particular point. We're into November, and did you see the top 10 that was released by the College Football Playoff Rankings? All kinds of traditional powers. There's going to be some awesome matchups coming up in the postseason, not just the conference games, but beyond that. If you don't make the top 4, the bowl season should be excellent. Some really intriguing matchups coming up.
Well, I have the bad, and I kind of alluded to earlier in the show. My bad is the fact that Nebraska is going to fire Mike Riley. I mean, if you think about it, as Steve said earlier, I mean, you've never heard a bad word said about the guy. The kids aren't getting in trouble, and he's got, he's got the program kind of. He needs to kind of move the program, but after 3 years, I mean, he needs. You would think that in this day and age, you need 4 or 5 years, at least have one recruiting class from start to finish. Give the guy a chance, but it's not going to happen.
College football playoffs, my ugly when it comes to the scheduling. Alabama has Mercer this week. The Citadel takes on Clemson. And Auburn plays, I think, Louisiana Lafayette or somebody. This is, again, the fraud put in by the SEC and the ACC in scheduling. The College Football Playoff Committee should send a message and knock down each program one spot in the poll next week, just symbolically, because then they'll have big games the week after, but symbolically to say, hey, you can't schedule like that. All right, time now for our picks. Oh, here we go. Brought to you by our good friends at Number One Cycle Center. Okay, let's see where the gang stands to this point. Jay and Todd did just fine. All right, so let's get to Todd. You've got Army, North Texas. You have been grappling over this.
Well, North Texas is one of the tougher places to play in the country, but I'm going to go with Army. They're used to playing in tough places. I'll go with the Cadets.
Jay, you've got Notre Dame and Navy.
One thing you can say about this game is this will be a ground game. These are two of the best rushing teams in the country. Notre Dame had a rough week, obviously, last week. I expect them to bounce back and beat Navy. I don't think we'll see the turnover chain come out as much with the midshipmen. Notre Dame should win this one, but it'll be a little closer than people think.
I've got UCLA, USC. UCLA just cannot stop them. USC wins big. All right, let's get to Michigan and Wisconsin, Trey.
Michigan, Wisconsin, there is absolutely no way I'm picking khaki boy Jim Harbaugh's Michigan team to go into Camp Randall and beat Wisconsin. I got Wisconsin in that game.
All right, Fiore Buick GMC. Keys to the game, and Todd Sadowski is the one that gets out of the gate with the first one.
All right, the secondary is going to be pushed this week. Let's get some interceptions. They need to create a few turnovers, get back on the good side of the turnover margin.
Turnover margin is going to be big because I think play with the lead, win special teams as well, get a couple of explosive plays.
I agree. I think that Penn State's got to just come out fast, and they just don't look back and just put the pedal to the metal. It's going to be a 50, 60-point game for Penn State.
And the other part, too, properly channel the emotion of senior days. A lot of emotion with that to get out of the gate. And if you channel it right, you end up having a big day, and that's what they're hoping for. All right, should be a lot of fun. Our thanks to Jay Paterno and Allison Luthman, also Dean Hart, who joined us on the show today as well. For Todd Sadowski, Trey Bauer, I'm Steve Jones. Thanks so much. Great to have you with us on the show on the Blue White Tailgate.